often in science we search for the most simplest ways for things to happen, right? Or the most efficient ways for things to occur. Yet sometimes it seems like the most complicated processes happen. For instance, wouldn't it be simpler if we were just composed of one giant cell as opposed to the uncountable number of cells that we're made out of? I mean, wouldn't that be simpler and even more efficient? The answer is no. And in fact, the answer largely has to do with the processes of osmosis and actually diffusion. Us being broken down into little cells helps diffusion occur a lot faster and at a lot more efficient rate. Simply put, if we were composed of just one giant animal cell, it would take too long for things to get to the core center of the cell and other parts and organelles of where they need to go. That the cell would probably die by the time any of those nutrients or ions or light energies actually reach the places that they need to reach. So us being dependent on the composition of an uncountable amount of cells really has to do with the surface area and volume ratio. And that the cell should have a surface area, which is a measurement of the cell membrane, and a volume of all the contents within it have to be at a specified ratio for this cell to operate properly. And these surface area and volume ratios really dictate the appropriate cell size that the organism would need in order for it to continue living properly. So the two types of cells or comparisons between cells that we would look at would be something like this, where I have a cell that has increased in size, and that would be cell block A, and then a cell that has decreased in size, or cell block B. And so if I'm thinking about the nutrients entering the cell, then they're diffusing. Okay, so let's say they come in from entry points over here, and they go towards the center. Well, it's going to take them a lot longer to go through the center here because there's so much empty space, right? As indicated over here, like all the green is empty space. And so by the time the nutrients even get there, your cell is likely starved or perhaps even dead. It's a very inefficient place to be because by the time the nutrients get to where they're supposed to go, the cell has already starved. And so it's not an efficient way to diffuse. Now the smaller cell over here, it also will diffuse to where it needs to go, but since there's less empty space, it happens a lot quicker. And so the cell can get the nourishment that it needs and as well excrete materials once it has too much or waste inside its body. And so when we have a larger cell, or as the cell grows, you have a lower surface area to volume ratio, so it'll take a lot longer to diffuse. Whereas the smaller cell that has a higher surface area to volume ratio, it will diffuse a lot faster and easier. A couple of rules here. If cells are too big, diffusion would take too long and cells would die of starvation, or they would likely poison themselves because the wastes would never get out in time. Because like every living thing, cells have to ingest something, digest, and then excrete any extras and toxic wastes. On the flip side, if cells are too small, the rate at which the cell would need to excrete material, because it would have no room inside its cell almost any time it consumes something, which it always needs to consume, just like us, the rate at which the cell excretes material would require more energy than it actually has. So the cell would have basically no choice except to divide or to die. There isn't an ideal surface area to volume ratio per se, but depending on the task that the specialized cell is asked to do, it's going to have its optimal surface area to volume ratio. In general, the larger the surface area to volume ratio of a cell, the better it can transport materials into and out of the cell. So let's say we have two cubes here, and each of these, of course, would represent a cell. So let's say the first cube's dimension is 3, 3, and 3. Well, when it comes to we could say the surface area, the formula is length times height times the number of sides. Now, since this is a cube, we know that this is going to be 6. So when I look at A and I write the surface area over here, the length is 3. The height is also 3, so we're 3 times 3. And then the number of sides is 6. And so that is going to give me about 54. And let's say that these were all in centimeters. Now, there's no cell this big, but we're just giving units for context. That's 54 centimeters cubed. Now, if I look at the surface area for the next one, again, same thing. It'll be the height or the length of 1.5. These are all, again, going to be into centimeters. Multiplied by 1.5 multiplied by 6. And that's going to give us a surface area 13.5 centimeters squared. Now, at the top over here, we're also going to calculate the volume of each. And that's going to be length, or L, times height times depth, which this would be the depth over here, which is going to be 3 since it's a cube. So we're going to have, for this one, the V is going to be 3 times the depth of 3. And then that is going to give us 27 centimeters cubed. That's going to be for A. And then for B, we're going to have here V is equal to 1.5 times 1.5 multiplied by 1.5. And when you plug that in your calculator, you get about 3.375 centimeters cubed. Now what we want to do is, we're not looking at these values singularly. We're going to look at the ratio between this value, or these values, and these values. And so when we look at cell block A, the surface area to volume ratio is 54 to 27, which that simplifies into 3 to 1. Whereas the surface area to volume ratio of cell block B is 13.5 to 3.375, and that simplifies to a ratio of 4 to 1.